is the former UFC welterweight champion and the man Dana White calls the greatest welterweight of all time. It is always my great pleasure to speak to my friend Kamaru Usman. Kamaru, what's going on? How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you, Damon?
I'm fantastic, man. Let's start right there. I saw the podcast, Pound for Pound, the one you do with Henry Cejudo. Dana White comes on, calls you the greatest welterweight of all time. Now I know fighters don't generally like to bestow that upon themselves. They let other people say that. But what does it mean to you when Dana White comes on there and says you're the greatest welterweight of all time?
Absolutely, it means a lot. Man. It means a lot because like we said, it's something that you never would really bestow upon yourself. You let others do that. But I always kind of wondered, uh, why? Because there was that debate on who are the greatest two, and then hearing his reasoning of why he thought that was okay. It was like, okay, I really appreciate that because, even myself, I love George GSP, and I think GSP is the greatest, or if one of the greatest, if not the greatest. So, it's not something that I put on myself. I let others do that. So I'm grateful for a compliment like that, especially from Dana.
What's funny is you guys had that conversation. I laughed about the 30% comment. He always brings that up. But you know what's funny? I remember talking to you around that. I still to this day don't think Dana understood when you said that. You were talking about you were at basically 30% health. You didn't give 30% effort. You were at 30% health. I think to this day he misunderstands it to you saying you gave 30% effort. Now it's like, that's never what you said. You always said you were at
Right.
30% health.
Right. No, you're right. I think he might have misunderstood that, but it wasn't. It's just timing and the way it came out. It wasn't what he wanted to hear at the time, and he reacted the way he reacted. But look, because of he reacted the way he reacted, caused the situation to where it eventually led us to the place where we had to mend the relationship and have such a great relationship now. So, everything happens for a reason, and I'm just grateful for all of it.
Absolutely. So obviously, coming off the big win in June, you go out there and dominantly beat Joaquin Buckley, kind of remind the world who you are, getting right back in there. And obviously, I know you have a vested interest in what's about to happen here in a couple of days because Islam Makhachev's going for the title against Jack Della Maddalena. So, can I just ask, coming out of the Buckley fight, like where's your head at in terms of what's next? I have to imagine a big part of why we're talking today is because of what's going on this weekend and your interest in that welterweight title fight.
Absolutely, I think it's. I made it clear kind of what I want is I want that title back. That's where I rightfully belong. Had it not been, it's a stupid mistake. A minute left. I wouldn't even say it's a mistake. It's a Hail Mary that just happened to work. With the minute left, we're not having this conversation right now, and so it's one of those situations. But with being out and taking some time off and really trying to heal your body and come back. I think it kind of, a lot of people had questions. A lot of people were, oh, yeah, time has gone by. He's no longer the same guy. He can't handle these guys anymore, these new, young, hungry contenders that are in the division now, like Buckley, because Buckley's impressive. Buckley's looked impressive and he still is impressive with the way that he was putting these guys away, pressing forward. I mean, with what he's done with Covington and the guys before, it was impressive. And so that was kind of a dangerous one to come back because honestly, looking at the landscape of the division at the time, he was the most dangerous guy up there in the top of that division. And so, a guy like that with power that could put you out with one shot, there was a lot of questions of whether I could still hang with these guys at the top of this division. And I think I answered those questions to just kind of let them know that, hey, this is what I want. I want the title. And hopefully the company feels I deserve that. I've earned that as well.
So you listen. You were just sitting down with Dana White. Give me some insight. He had to at least talk to you a little bit about
No,
like
no, Dana, we've never spoken about that. It's a conversation that needs to be had with obviously the brass, Hunter, and these guys to kind of let you know what they think is next because they're running the company, they're running the business, so it's got to be in their hands as well.
So let me ask you, I know you've talked about this on your podcast, and I'm sure you're going to talk about it more this week, but what do you make of Jack Della Maddalena and Islam Makhachev? I mean, Islam is a favorite. I think a lot of people are counting Jack out, which I think is a little crazy. He's a very good fighter, legit welterweight. You know, there is something to be said about going up a division for Islam. So what do you make of that fight, and which way are you leaning?
I think yeah, that is a crazy thing to count him out. I think Jack is talented. I've always thought he was talented coming up in the division. And with the way that he went out about his last fight and was able to the way he looked impressive, and he really put everything together. Now, same with Islam. Islam is I love Islam. Islam is extremely talented, and Islam's been phenomenal with what he's been presented with the last 5, 6, 7 years, however long he's been on the street. And so I think it's a very close related fight. I don't think one guy is just head and shoulders above the other guy, but I do think there is an area to where one guy could shine, and I think that would be in the grappling aspect.
And I mean, you look at what Islam did at lightweight, incredibly impressive. And obviously, if that translates to welterweight, that's a good thing, right? Like because, like even like as good as Jack looked against Bilal, Bilal didn't really try to wrestle him much. I don't think Islam's going to go out there and try to strike with. I don't think he's going to show Canelo hands for 5 rounds.
Well, that's that's great that you say that. But this is the thing though. There's a misconception about Islam. Islam's a very good striker. Like we can't forget, Islam put Charles Oliveira down before he jumped on that arm triangle and put him away. Islam worked the body well with those kicks until eventually sent it to the head and put away Alexander Volkanovski. So we can't count Islam out with the striking there. Islam does have great striking, and if he chooses to utilize it, I think he can. But I think there is an area to where there is a bit of a gap, and I would say that is the grappling aspect because that's just an area where Islam has spent a lot more time, and Jack genuinely prefers to stand in and box with you.
When it comes to getting the title back, I'm quite sure if it was Jack, if it was Shavkat, if it was Ian Gary, if it was whoever, you're going to take the fight and be ready for that. But when you look at the lay of the land at welterweight, is Kamaru Usman versus Islam Makhachev just the biggest fight? Like in terms of like what this division could do, we think back to you and Masvidal, right? Like you and Masvidal had such a rivalry. There was so much hype going into the first fight, and then obviously with the rematch, you and Colby Covington. That was another monumental fight for the welterweight division. So much hype, so much bad blood. When you look at the lay of the land of like the biggest fights we could promote right now, you talk about Alex Pereira, John Jones. I think that's legit. That's a very, very big fight. Where does Kamaru Usman, Islam Makhachev? Like that's got to rank somewhere near the top of that in terms of like magnitude, how big that fight could be.
Absolutely, I think if you look at the whole company right now as a whole, obviously, yes, John versus Alex is a humongous fight. I think maybe the return of Connor. That's just because it's the return. Everyone wants to answer those questions. Is can he still fight? And I think it's obviously for both former pound for pound. I don't think in history that's ever happened to where they go at it. And so I think that's a humongous fight because listen, I love Islam. It's not. This ain't one of those situations where we're coming in and I hate your uncles or I hate you and this is it's pure competition of the best of the best. And so I think that's it's the biggest for sure. And it's you want one of those fights. You want one of those fights that really elevates the division, that really puts that division on the forefront to where everyone knows there's a welterweight matchup coming up, everyone pays attention. And I think this is that fight, myself and Islam. Like, don't get me wrong, uh, myself and JDM as well. That's a big fight for the new guard going up against the old guard. I think that's a big fight as well. But I think just with the fact that we've never seen two pound for pound fighters go in there and duke it out. I think that right there is a blockbuster, and I think it's definitely close to the top.
And just to be clear, whoever wins on Saturday, that's who you want next. Let me just be clear about that. Whoever wins,
Absolutely,
that's who you want.
absolutely, absolutely. I'm not sitting here going, oh, I want Islam. I just want Islam. No, because No, it's I want the title. And right now, the two guys that happen to be fighting for that title is Islam and Jack. So whoever that person is the fight that I want. Obviously, if it's Jack, absolutely the old guard versus the new guard. I mean, it's also still a contrast in style. Yes, I want that fight. But if it's Islam, I mean, that sells itself. I mean, take my money now.
100%. You know, during your career, Kamar, you fought so many great strikers, and I brought this up after I didn't go either going into or coming out of the Joaquin Buckley fight. I said, when you look at you, and I'm not taking anything away from Leon Edwards. Let me be clear about that. Like he got that shot on you, but I said when you look at the lay of the land of those two fights, you won more rounds than you lost against Leon Edwards. I know that doesn't change the result, but that's just saying like what it was. You fought
Right.
all kinds of strikers, and I'm sure you would gladly fight another striker in Jack Della Maddalena. But I think the biggest, like, I won't say knock, the biggest question about Islam is how is he going to do when he runs into another high level grappler? I think that's why a lot of people wanted to see him run it back with Arman because Arman had been on a great run. Unfortunately, we just never got to see that. When you look at welterweight right now, you look at, I mean, Sean Brady's on a great run to his credit, obviously, great grappler. Obviously, Bilal was champion. But you look at Ian Machado Gary, you look at even a Shavkat Rakhmonov to a certain extent. Who is the best grappler, the best wrestler at welterweight? Well, I think I'm sitting right in front of him right now. Do you feel like that, like if Islam becomes champion, you are beyond anything else the toughest matchup for him at welterweight?
I mean, I'll let everyone else answer that because I would just love to compete, and I think it's because I mean over time when I was coming up in the division, you know when you hear of these big tough matches or tough matchups, it's like it's a lot of anxiety thinking about it, but now in the position that I'm in, I've been there, I've done that to where I understand that it's all a gift. It's a blessing to be able to have that anxiety field matchup that really gets you going to where you're on your toes each and every time, each and every day, each and every training session. And so it's just one of those things that I know it's a blessing and to have any of those. And so it would be a blessing to have someone like Islam to go up against someone like Islam, who is a great grappler as well, that can kind of bring a contrast to the fighting style to where you have to find a way to win. Same with JDM. JDM's great striking, great boxing, and don't take anything away from him. He can grapple as well. It's just one of those. It hasn't been something that we've seen from him go to primarily. So either one. I just think it's getting that opportunity is a blessing. And if that opportunity arises again, we'll see. Because I mean, you saw what happened when the next best grappler in the division in Covington at the time, when we had to duke it out. It was just like, okay, this is the type of fight that you're gonna get. So it's a blessing to get those type of fights, and hopefully I get one of those again.
I know you said if it is Islam, there's no bad blood. There would be no like Colby Covington kind of rivalry, anything like that. And I know that you have a lot of respect. Like when you were champion, Khabib was champion. Like a lot of respect. And I know at one point Khabib had talked about coming up to welterweight. Can I imagine like there's no conflict of interest here? I guess is what I'm getting at because I know you and Islam obviously share the same manager. A lot of respect there, but there's no obstacle that would prevent you from fighting Islam Makhachev.
No, I don't think, and I think for Islam as well. I mean, unless I'm wrong, I think for Islam, I think we feel the same. Where it's we like each other. I really I like those guys a lot. Islam especially, and so it's not one of those where I'm going in here saying that I want to hurt the guy or I want to do this to the guy. Like the in the Covington fight, that was personal. That was we had to duke that one out. But this one is strictly, at least from my perspective, is pure competition. I just want to compete against the best. And if Islam is able to come up and take that title away, then he's proven that he is the best right now in that spot. So it's up to me to go and show him that I'm better than him. So it's purely competition.
Would you, on the flip side, with Jack, if he's able to go out there and pull out the upset, I know this is kind of like a random one, but uh, I know you said you fight him, you have no problem fighting him. Would you even try?
Absolutely.
Can I imagine you'd even travel to Australia to fight a guy like that?
Well, I don't. I think it's gonna that's gonna depend on the company because it's one of those situations where is that fight is that a a fight, a good big, is that a fight that you want to do in Australia? Because it is a big fight. And then we know based on timeline wise and timing and, that might be a fight that they want to do here in North America because, we all know how these big fights go. And so, it is what it is. It doesn't matter where it is. It's if it's in my mom's backyard, if it's at the White House, it doesn't matter where it's at. If that opportunity presents itself, then we have to go and get that title.
Can I ask you, Kamaru, this weekend, obviously you got Sean Brady taking on Michael Morales, who's looked incredible
Mm,
lately. I mean,
right.
obviously, I know you have a lot of respect. Obviously, you train with Gilbert Burns. Doing that to Gilbert Burns, you just don't do that to Gilbert Burns. Like the only guys who've done that to Gilbert Burns are you, I think, if I'm not mistaken, putting him away like that. What do you make of that fight, and what do you make of the potential of the winner of that coming out and looking like I don't necessarily think the winner's going to get a title shot, but like they're going to be in that race.
Yeah, I mean it's a great time to be in a top welterweight right now. There's just so many fun matchups, so many fun fights. And these guys are really they're starting to inch their way up to the top of the division. I honestly I don't think anyone is really like in front of the other right now because if you look at the landscape, it's difficult to say Shafkat is in front of Sean Brady and Carlos Prates and Ian Machado Gary. Yes, of course he did get the win over them, but it's difficult to say that. And vice versa with Ian. Yes, coming off that last win, it's difficult to say you're over Michael Morales or Brady or and these guys. So you've got up there. These guys are kind of bunched up there. Where you've got Michael Morales, you've got Joaquin Buckley as well. You've got Sean Brady, you've got Ian Gary, you've got Carlos Prates. All these guys are just there. It's exciting. And I think hopefully after this weekend, some guys kind of separate themselves to where now they're, top tier. And then there's the tier below those guys. And these guys, a fight or two away, they're getting the potential next shot. So, it's something that I'm keeping my eye on, and we'll see what happens.
Well, I mean, it's all about timing and opportunity. You know that better than anyone. When you got your title shot against Tyron Woodley, timing and opportunity paid off. You went in there, beat him very dominantly, became champion. Right now, you look at the lay of the land. Like, Bilal's obviously coming off a loss. Ian has one win, but, again, he did lose to Shavkat. Shavkat would be the X factor, but he's been gone so long. It's kind of like you can't really slot him in for a title shot right now after
Right,
all this.
right.
So I'm just saying, like, it does kind of seem like the momentum's rolling in the old Kamaru Usman on the old Kamaru Usman trail right now.
I'm saying you said it, not me. It's if boom something happens next week. Now they're looking for that next guy. All those guys that you mentioned, it's almost like yeah, they're great. They're doing really really well, but are you someone who because there's different factors here. Now you have to be able to for the company. Is this going to be a big fight that's going to bring in dollars? Is this going to be the next guy that's going to run the division? And so there's a lot of factors that play there. And is this a trusted, proven name that we know that has the skills to be champion and stay champion, and of course, represent the company in the way that needs to be represented. So there's it's rolling down the hill, towards my direction. I hope so. We'll
Uh,
see.
before I get Cheddar, can I ask real quick? Like, I know, listen, it is about competition, and as I said, like, I'm sure in your heart of hearts, you would gladly at some point run it back with Leon Edwards again if that ever happened. But obviously, like when you had your fights with Leon, you came back and kind of reminded the world who you are by going out there and absolutely dominating a guy who was on a great winning streak of Joaquin Buckley. You went out there and took him out and beat him very dominantly. How big is the fight with Carlos and Leon this weekend for Leon? Because Leon, he lost to Bilal. It wasn't like a totally one-sided fight, but he lost the title. But then the Sean Brady fight happened, and he actually got submitted first time he'd ever been finished. So how big is this weekend for Leon as far as like where he goes in the future? Because you were able to bounce back. Can he do the same kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean it's a big one because you don't really want to drop that many fights like that and not just drop the fights, but being just dominated in that way. This one poses a bit of a different challenge because this is another striker. And that's primarily not been the area where Leon has struggled. And so, yeah, it's a big one, but it's definitely a big one because no one wants to drop three in a row. But I think there's still questions that needs to be answered. Can you deal with a grappler that's going to go in and try to put you down? And unless we get the answers, it's going to be tough to kind of say, okay, this is how this one is or how this one isn't, because those questions aren't answered yet. But it's a big one because no one really wants to drop three in a row, and of course, no one wants to be finished two out of those three.
Yeah. Real quick, you mentioned after your last win, you had like the ideal scenario for how you would run the rest of your career. You would go out there, recapture the welterweight title, and eventually go up to middleweight. We know Hamzat's out there. That rematch on a training camp would be interesting when you're not going in on 10 days' notice, going up a weight class, and still giving him the toughest fight of his career. So, in an ideal world, like right now, where you're at right now, Kamaru, it is welterweight title, winner of Jack and Islam, and then that other potential is still out there, I would assume.
Potential. I mean, obviously, if Hamza is the champion, I think that makes sense. I mean, for me and also for him, I think that's a big fight because when you're champion, it's one thing to become champion. That's the most difficult process. But when you do become that champion, you want to fight that everyone's going to stop and go, "Oh, I'm watching that on Saturday. That's what I'm doing. That's my Saturday plans is I'm watching this fight." And it's not often that you get those type of fights. And so for Hamza, I think that is one of those fights. And for myself, I think that is one of those fights. So of course I would want to potentially get this title. And the only thing missing from the resume is a two division champion and try to go and get that title as well.
Yeah, but regaining the welterweight title is the priority right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I know you said like it's not for you to bestow that crown upon your head being the greatest of all time. I think the argument literally just comes down to you and George. That's the only argument when it comes down to welterweight is you and George. But it would say a lot, right, to go out there and reclaim it again, to go out there and become a two-time champion. Like that's not easy to do. You don't see a lot of guys who are able to do that. I think it would say a lot about you to go through a little adversity, come back, win, beat Joaquin Buckley, and then whether it's Jack or Islam, that says a lot about where you're at in your career. You become a two-time champion, right?
Right. Absolutely. I agree. I think that became the challenge the moment I lost the title. It was how to get that back and can you get that back? And I think there was a lot of questions before that last fight, and I think I potentially answered them.
White House card. I'm just saying. I think that'd be a big one.
We'll see. White House,
we need
my
some
backyard. It doesn't
we
matter
need some
where it's
Americans.
at.
We need some Americans on. Like we need a guy because like right now we don't like. I know everyone's talking about John Jones. We need, but also by the way, real quick, I got to ask: Are we ever going to do? Are we ever going to do UFC Africa? That was something so talked about for the longest time, and it just seems
Yeah.
like it's kind of faded away now.
Well, we'll see. I think the company's is going through a lot of things right now, and we'll see if they're able to get that on track. Then potentially, I would love to see them run that.
Yeah, lots of potential.
Yeah.
Well, Kamaro, I love the idea of you getting this next title shot. When you look at the lay of the land, I think it makes a lot of sense. When you really think about it, when you really break down who's out there, what would be the biggest fight right now? And I'm certainly not discounting Jack. I think Jack's an incredible fighter, but we got to be honest. Like you and Islam, that's like a different level. That's not knock on
Absolutely.
knock. That's not knock on
Absolutely.
Jack, by the way.
No, it's absolutely not a knock on Jack. I think Jack is extremely talented, and I would love to share the octagon with him if he's still his champion. But if it's Islam, yeah, we know what it is.
Huge fight. Well, Kamaro, I appreciate the time as always. I know you'll be watching on Saturday, and we look forward to seeing what happens with the winner. And I appreciate your time as always, and look forward to catching up again in the future.
Thanks, David.